Hello. In this video, we're going to look at converting between units, and we're specifically going to look at converting back and forth between imperial measurement and metric measurement. So let's start with, for example, a distance of 3 yards, and we want to convert that to meters. Now for this, we're going to need the conversion factor of 1 yard equals 0.914 meters, and there's a number of different ways we can deal with this. But essentially, conversion factors are either going to be multiplied or divided depending on what we're doing. And sometimes, in order to remember, well, do I multiply by this 0.914 or do I divide? One of the easiest ways to do this is unit analysis. So I have 3 yards, and I have a fraction that's essentially equal to 1. And that fraction can either be written as 1 yard over 0.914 meters. This ratio is 1. Or I can write it as 0.914 meters over 1 yard. That's two separate ways of writing this ratio that is essentially just 1 because 1 yard equals 0.914 meters. So looking at 3 yards, I want to cancel out yards and replace it with meters, which means I need to use this second fraction. So I'm going to multiply by 0.914 meters over 1 yard. What this means is that my yard measurement will cancel out, and what is left is just meters. And when I multiply 3 times 0.914, what I get is 2.742 meters. So that is the conversion. Now, typically we would only give 3 significant digits on this, so 2.74 meters would be acceptable as an answer here. Now, that gets a little more complicated. If we're going from imperial to metric, then decimals are fine. We use decimals with metric because the metric system is based on base 10, so it is decimal in nature. Imperial is less straightforward, let's say. So let's say we want to convert 12 centimeters into inches, and then this to the nearest 1/16 of an inch I'll get to in a moment. But first I'm going to convert from 12 centimeters to inches, just like I did above. So I have 12 centimeters. I have a conversion that tells me that 1 inch is equal to 2.54 centimeters. Since it's centimeters that I want to cancel out, the centimeters are going to go on the bottom of a fraction. And that leaves me with 1 inch in the numerator, which means that in this case, in order to cancel out centimeters, I actually need to divide 12 by 2.54. And when I do that, I get approximately 4.7244, etc. inches. Now with inches, it's not really standard to give the answer as decimal because inches aren't decimal based. In fact, it's standard to break inches down into halves or quarters or eighths or sixteenths in this case, or even 30 seconds. So what I'm going to try and figure out then is how many sixteenths is this? So essentially, I know the 4. The 4 is the whole number. So subtracting the 4 off of my answer and just dealing with the 0.7244, etc., I multiply that by 16 in order to figure out how many sixteenths it is. This is approximately 11.5 out of 16. So what I'm going to call this is 12 sixteenths. Now, we wouldn't really write something as 12 sixteenths. We would simplify that to 3/4. So my conclusion here is that this is 4 3/4 inches. Now with inches, you can write IN or you can write 4 3/4 inches with with a quotation, double quotation mark here. That's inches. It gets a little confusing. There's a lot of different standards here. One thing that you'll see me doing pretty consistently is when it is an imperial measurement, there is a period at the end of the unit. So here with yards, I put a period. Yard has a period. Inches, there's a period. Feet down here, there's a period. But with metric measurements, we don't. It's just one of those weird conventions. All right, so now what if I want to convert 173 centimeters to feet and inches? Now what this doesn't mean is convert it to feet and then also convert it to inches. It means to convert it to a mixed measurement of feet and inches. So for example, most of us would say something like, oh, well, I'm 5'9" tall, rather than giving that as 69 inches or 5.75 feet. So that's essentially what we're looking to do here is convert it into a mixed measurement. I start the same way. So 173 centimeters. And I know that there are 12 inches in 1 foot. Well, hold up. I don't actually have inches here. I have centimeters. So that's where I'm going to use this conversion from before. I don't have a conversion here for centimeters directly into feet, but I am going to convert it into inches to start. So that was 2.54 centimeters in 1 inch, which means I'm taking the 173 and dividing by 2.54, which gives me approximately 68.111. But since I just want inches, I'm just going to give a whole number of inches. That's an appropriate precision for something that seems to be about human height-ish. So we're going to call that 68 inches. Now, that's where the 12 inches in 1 foot comes in. So I want to know essentially how many whole feet is this and how many is left over. So 68 divided by 12, 68 divided by 12 would give me 5.66666. Now, you can recognize that as being 5 2/3. But that's kind of irrelevant because that's the part I'm going to just convert back into inches. The only thing I care about is this is 5 whole feet. Feet we can represent with a single quotation, just an apostrophe. And then 5 feet, so I sort of figure out, okay, well, 5 times 12 is 60. So that means I had 8 left over. Essentially, I'm wanting a remainder. So this is 5 with a remainder of 8. That 8 is the inches that are left over. So 5 feet and 8 inches. Or you could write that using the FT and IN. So I could write this as 5 feet, 8 inches. But with imperial, we can use, so here you can use the abbreviation IN, or you can use for inches the double quotation mark, and for feet a single apostrophe. All right, one last conversion, because in this case I don't just have a distance, I actually have a speed. And again, it illustrates a difference between how we represent speeds in metric versus speeds in imperial. In imperial, it's very rare to see miles per hour like that. So miles per hour will often write mph, but that can get a little confusing because was that meters? And no, it isn't. If it was meters, we would write it this way, meters per hour. And then kilometers per hour, it's a little more standard to write it this way. From context, we can usually figure out what's happening. Obviously, 35 meters per hour is going to be much, much, much slower than 60 kilometers per hour. So that's probably not what this question is asking. So I either need to convert 35 miles per hour into kilometers per hour or 60 kilometers per hour into miles per hour. I'm just going to go with the 35. So I have 35 miles in 1 hour. I don't need to convert the hour because both of my units are per hour. If I had a unit that was in like meters per second, for example, then I would need to convert both the distance unit and the time unit to be in the appropriate unit, but I don't need to do that here. So I do have a conversion that 1 mile is 1.609 kilometers. Since it's miles, I'm trying to cancel. The 1 mile is going to be in the denominator and 1.609 kilometers in the numerator. So notice that what that does with my units, miles cancel out, and what's left is kilometers per hour. That is exactly what I want. So 35 times 1.609 gives me 56.3 roughly. So this is about 56 point, it's more than that, but the 1.609 isn't an exact value, it's an approximate value. So we'll stick with 3 significant digits. So 56.3 kilometers per hour. So that's slower. Therefore, the answer to the question, 60 kilometers per hour, is faster.